And now you're looking at a diagram that captures the essence of the SSLD change process. What it does is that when you look at what you have as a problem on the left-hand side, right, you always translate those into needs that are to be met, right, and at the center. And once you see the needs to be met at the center, then you can look at your right-hand side, and then you look at the alternate things that you can do, to address the same need, so that you do not have to rely on those problematic responses or strategies on the left, right? So it's pretty straightforward. Like you have a problem, like an addiction issue, like I'm doing drugs, I'm drinking too much, or I'm using gambling, or I'm hooked to the internet constantly, instead of like blaming yourself, right? And feeling defeated and keep like focusing on what the problem is doing to you, we want you to start asking what the problem is doing for you, right? So when you see what you're doing, right, as shown in this diagram, you ask, what needs are being met by my behavior? Well, maybe drinking and doing drugs are your major means of attaining pleasure and excitement. Maybe you have some pain um, that you sustain from some very hurtful, painful experience in the past, or some trauma in the past, and you need this to reduce your pain. And maybe you're feeling that you do not have a lot of control over your life, and through what you're doing, you at least can feel that you are in control of something, and you have some sense of mastery over something. And those may be the reasons why you're addicted. So instead of like blaming yourself, right, for being bad or being weak or being sick, you can actually be thinking about, okay, I know those are the needs behind my problem. What can I do to address those needs, right? So that I have less dependence or reliance on this problematic behaviors. Well, so you look at the right-hand side. So if you need like pleasure and excitement, well, you can develop effective pleasure-seeking behaviors, which is less detrimental to your personal functioning, to your health, to your everyday life. You can also be learning specific skills to manage stress or to manage pain, right? You may also want to learn problem-solving skills and better interpersonal skills. Then you have a better sense of mastery and control over your interpersonal and social reality. If you use this particular um, approach to look at issues in life, right, then what you will see is that you can actually use this same analysis for a lot of problems. I'm going to give you a couple more examples using the same analytic frame. So this is addiction that you have looked at, and think of this, right? You have just like broken up with someone, right? After breaking up, some of us will be doing something that is self-damaging, and some of us will experience like a low level of motivation. We try to withdraw from things, we isolate ourselves from our friends or from our work, from our social world. Uh, well, some people may do like some more dramatic things, but the important thing is for us to look at, so what does it mean, right? What needs are not being met, or what needs are being threatened at this point with the breakup? Well, I would say in most breakups, the most important issue is self-image, right? Am I not good enough? Am I not attractive enough? Like, is he or she now with someone better? That is the kind of self-questioning. And remember what I said earlier, self-acceptance. It is important for you to understand that, well, even if you are the best person in the world, there will be people who do not get along well with you. And someone leaving does not mean that you are not good. And you have to look at the self-image or the self-esteem needs, right? Instead of just like thinking about it, you have to think of doing things that are positively contributing, right, to a sense of self, a better sense of self. And a lot of us, like, in a breakup situation, will be like going through some emotional turmoil. So one of the things that we need is to return to a state of emotional homeostasis, or, in everyday language, to a state of like emotional balance or stability. Right? Obviously, like when you're breaking up, you're losing a relationship. And what a good relationship usually does is that it addresses your need for attachment, connection with people, or need for intimacy. And now you don't have that anymore. So what do? Right? You try to address your attachment and intimacy needs through what? Usually is through developing another relationship or reconfiguring your relationships. But obviously, like if you're doing it in a strategic step-by-step manner, you may not want to immediately jump into another relationship. You may want to take time to think about the whole thing, gain a better understanding of your needs. And usually we recommend you to come to a point of emotional stability first before you venture forth into another intimate relationship. But in the meantime, you can certainly be mobilizing all the support that you can get from your existing relationships and try to enjoy the positive elements in those relationships before you move on. And then obviously, in the breakup situation, some of the needs that are threatened will be a sense of security because you're trusting someone so much, and you may feel that you're being betrayed, and this trust is undermined, and you would need to re-establish that sense of security. Well, one other example I want to give here is that, a good relationship is fun. A good relationship brings you pleasure. And when you have lost the relationship, then obviously you need, right, other strategies to bring pleasure into your life. So if you look at like the needs that you have when you're in a breakup situation, well, when you look at the right-hand side, those are the things that you can do to help yourself deal with this situation, right? And this is another example of moving from problem to strategies and skills. And here is like an example that may not be relevant to you unless you're a parent with a child with ASD, right? If you do not know what ASD is, it stands for Autistic Spectrum Disorder. So I'm just like using this different examples to show you the same reasoning. So if you see some behavior that are seen as problematic, we translate that into, so what needs are being met by this behavior. So I'm using this as an example, right? Even when with children who are diagnosed with like autistic spectrum disorder, sometimes they have some behavior that are unusual or seen as weird, but those behaviors again are functional. This behavior were the child's attempt to gain pleasurable stimulation. That the child is also using some of the behavior we see as problematic to assert their sense of agency. They may even be reaching out in a way that we do not understand, right, for affiliation. And then very often, they're also trying to maintain a certain sense of control and mastery over the world because they're overwhelmed. So what do we do when we see something like that? Again, we do not judge, right? We do not judge these things that, well, that this child is not good, or like this child has some weakness. We look at what can be done to address those needs more effectively. And that is like what you see in the right-hand side. So that is the key idea, right, in SSLD thinking. Needs are at the center of the drama of life, and whatever you're facing, we look at the problem and then translate them into needs, and then we want to be developing a new repertoire or collection of strategies and skills so that we can move on and address our needs more effectively. So that is the key idea. And we will soon be back to talk about the specific learning and development of strategies and skills.